Dallas Theological Seminary's Chapel Podcast.
The NCAA Basketball Association has its March Madness. The NBA has its playoffs. Dallas Seminary has its chili cook-off, all of which are competitions where some are eliminated and some advance. But senior preaching is not like that. We are here this week to celebrate God's grace as it has been demonstrated in the lives of 4 men who have been selected by the Department of Pastoral Ministries to preach to us, and who are particularly representative of people who have done as many of you are doing, gone through the years of seminary and made it to expository preaching 4 and have done exemplary work in that class. We have not engaged in a competition, but rather we are looking to see and hear from men who can give us good examples of expository preaching that's from the Scriptures and is clear and accurate and relevant and interesting. This week, as Chaplain Bill has said, we'll hear from 4 different men. Our speaker this morning is Mr. Bill Gressette. Bill is a graduate of the Citadel, originally from South Carolina. The Citadel is the military college of South Carolina, and you may salute him, I suppose, as when he comes. Bill has been married to his wife, Donna. Donna, welcome. Glad to have you here. They've been married for 16 years and have 3 beautiful children. And he says he's actually become an avid cowboy fan by living in Dallas. I think I'm impressed. Bill and Donna literally sold the farm. They sold all they had when they left South Carolina, had a couple of businesses in order to seek God's will as they would come to Dallas Seminary. And now as they near the end of this pilgrimage, they're trusting God to demonstrate His way forward as they look to engage in pastoral ministry or perhaps even church planting in the days ahead. But I know that Bill would not want attention drawn to him, but to our God and to His Word. Will you welcome Bill with me as we invite him to the pulpit here?
Thank everybody for that warm welcome. That was good. Have y'all ever had one of those reoccurring nightmares? Now, I don't want to be called into counseling, but one of those reoccurring nightmares, the thing that keeps popping up over and over again when you're sleeping, and when you have one, you wake up, and the first thing that you do is go, God, thank you, that was a dream. Whew, I'm glad that was a dream. One of those, for me, is I'm back at the Citadel, and the physical fitness test is tomorrow. The physical fitness test at the Citadel was held once a semester, twice a year, and it mandated 42 push-ups in 2 minutes, 53 sit-ups in 2 minutes, and then the impossible for me, the 2-mile run in 15 minutes or less. And if you failed, it was remedial PT for you. And let me explain what that meant. That meant waking up at 5:30 in the morning. That meant reporting at the gymnasium all the way across campus, being there in formation at 600 for an hour of strenuous exercise. It was torture. And if you can't tell, I'm speaking from experience. You see, I failed the test twice my freshman year, twice my sophomore year, and now it was my junior year. And I was headed out to the parade ground to take that test, and I stopped and my heart just sank. Because when I looked over there across the parade ground, I saw our brand new regimental commander. And there he was. And before I go on, I've got to explain something to you. You see, I was a football player, and the regimental commander was like the pinnacle of all what we termed military geeks. And there he was, and see, they used to look at us, and they thought we were way too slack. We were slackers, and they were the military geeks. You know, we thought that they took all this military stuff way too seriously, and it had gone to their heads. And they just wished that we would straighten up and act like soldiers. And our case really wasn't helped by the fact that we got out of a lot of parades, a lot of drills, a lot of the things that they had to go to. So they really kind of didn't like us. And they loved the fact that we couldn't get out of the PT test. And there he was. And this guy was Ray was not any ordinary regimental commander. This guy was chiseled out of stone. I mean, he was airborne, air assault. He had already earned his Ranger tab. He had come and come back from Ranger school. And I knew that out of the 200 people that were going to be taking the test right then, his eyes were going to be on me. So we went out there and the test started. I knocked out the push-ups and the sit-ups. That was never really a problem for me. But then we lined up to climb Mount Everest. The gun went off and I took off around the parade ground, and we had to go around the parade ground 4 times for 2 miles. And every time that you would pass, the timekeeper would call out your time. And as I went around the first time, you know, I was making pretty good time. I was doing good. But as I rounded the second time, my legs got heavier and heavier. My body started to ache. And I rounded, and I said, I'm going to push myself real hard. And so I ran real hard on the third lap, and I got all the way around, and my legs felt like they weighed about 2 tons each. Every muscle in my body just screamed, quit, quit, quit. And as I crossed the finish line, I heard the guy, as I crossed that third lap, he called out the time. And I knew what I had left in my tank. And I knew I wasn't going to make it around for the fourth lap. And I looked up and I saw my barracks right over there, and I said, you know what? I can push myself for that 100 yards and I can make it to my barracks. And I'm just going to peel it on in there, and I'm going to report for Hog Jog first thing Monday morning. And as I was in this plan, I looked out of the corner of my eye, and you're not going to believe this. Bray Hopkins was sprinting across the parade ground as fast as he could, and he was running right for me. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I wasn't going to outrun him. So he ran up to me, and let me tell you, he grabbed me by the chest like this and pulled my shirt and said, come on, follow me, pick him up, let me pull you. And he drugged me, and he began to drag me around that parade ground. And as he began to coach me, slow down your breathing, in through your nose, out through your mouth, lengthen out your stride. And he drugged me all the way around the parade ground. And we kept on, and we came around to the finish line, and the timekeeper called out, 14:55. Yeah. Man, that was the first time I'd ever passed the PT test. And it was all because of Bray. But aren't there times in our lives, especially in ministry, where our legs get heavy, our body aches, and we just want to quit? We want to stop because it hurts. It costs more than we have to give. And couldn't you benefit from somebody grabbing you by the shirt and saying, come on, let me pull you for a while? But how do we effectively do that? We find the answer today in the text, which is Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10, we're going to be in verse 24 and 25. And verse 24 and 25 is the culmination of one long sentence that begins back in verse 19. In our English translations, it's a whole paragraph. But in the original, it's one sentence. And so we're just going to look at the final part of this one sentence today. And I want you to see that we are to uniquely motivate one another. And then I want you to understand how this unique motivation is to take place. And finally, I want you to grasp why it's so important. Look with me as we read. It says, and let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our own assembling together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Uniquely motivate one another. Uniquely motivate one another. The verb here that we see is, it says, let us consider. But let us consider means to seriously think about. It means to give serious thought to. It's something that you have to exert brain waves to do. It's not automatic. It's not generic. It's a unique thing that has to be thought about. And what are we to think about? We're to think about how to stimulate one another. The word here, stimulate, is only found twice in the New Testament. Found once in Acts chapter 15, verse 39, where it describes the intense disagreement that Barnabas and Paul had together. But here, this word means to rouse to activity, to stir it up, to provoke into action. Therefore, a lot of your Bibles, your translations might have to spur on. Those sharp things that are on the back of a cowboy's boot that he sticks in the back of a horse and makes that horse giddy up and go. He's provoking that horse to move. So what the text is telling us here is that we need to think about how we can stimulate or provoke one another into action. You see, when Bray, in my unique situation, when he came over here and he slapped me on the shirt and he started to drag me, that was unique to my need at the time. It was unique to what I needed. It was unique to my need. It wasn't a generic thing. It wasn't like, come on, you can do it. And you know, while I've been here, there's been so many people that have uniquely motivated me, that have uniquely spurred me on. One of which is Obi-Wan Kenobi. And let me tell you, I was in Hebrew 4, and I just didn't get it, you know? I mean, it was tough. I just didn't get it. And like those guys that were running around that parade ground that day, I saw the class just getting further and further ahead. And so I went to the professor and I said, Prof, I said, I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm lost. And every day I just feel like y'all keep getting further and further ahead. He said, oh, don't worry about it. He said, here's 3 tutors. Give them a call and they're going to help you out. So I said, all right. So I went home and I called the first one and he never called me back. So I said, well, okay, no fear, I got another one. So I called the other one. And then he called me back and he said, hey man, what's your problem? And I said, well, let me tell you. And so I kind of explained it to him. He said, oh man, that's easy. You don't have a problem. All you gotta do is get a few commentaries, do this, do that, do this. Oh, you don't need my help. You see, that was generic. You know, that was attaboy, you can do it. That was like that runner, you know, one of them runners that runs around the parade ground and does that whole entire run in about 10 minutes. And say, oh, Gressette, man, all you gotta do is just run a little harder, you can do that. So discouraged, I picked up the phone and I called Joanna and I said, Joanna, I said, this is kind of role reversal here, but as I was leaving this message, I said, I feel like I'm Princess Leia and I'm leaving my message in R2-D2. And I'm here to tell you right now, if you don't help me, you're my only hope. Now, those might not have been the exact words, but it was about that desperate. And later on that evening, the phone rang. And I picked it up and I said, hello. And Joanna said, is this Bill? And I said, yes, it is. And I said, who is this? She goes, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Man, let me tell you, Joanna grabbed me by the shirt and she drugged me through Hebrew 4. She helped me, she coached me, she spurred me on, she motivated me, uniquely for my time, uniquely for my need. So we see that we're to uniquely motivate one another. But what's the goal of this motivation? Look with me in the second part of verse 24. And it says, and let us consider how to motivate or how to stimulate, how to spur one another on to love and good deeds. The love and the good deeds is the goal of the motivation. When Brett grabbed me and he dragged me, the goal was for me to pass the PT test. And if I'd have failed, you know what? No big deal. I'd have gone to remedial PT. If we fail, the consequences are eternal. The word love here, Jesus said in John 13:35, by this will all men know that you're my disciples, if you have love one for another. The good deeds, he said in Matthew chapter 5, verse 16, let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works, your good deeds, same word, and glorify your Father which is in heaven. You see, these love and good deeds, they are what edifies the kingdom through the body of believers. That's what draws people to God. That's what makes God look good. That's why we've got to motivate those that are in front of us, those that are beside us, those that are behind us, those that sit in our classrooms, because love and good deeds, and it's of eternal significance. So we're to uniquely motivate one another to edify the kingdom. But how is it done? Look with me in verse 25, the first part of verse 25. It says, not forsaking our own assembling together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another. The author tells us here that for some reason or another, his audience had stopped meeting together. Doesn't give us the reason why, but we can more than likely figure it was for some selfish reason. But the consequences are clear here, because it says because they weren't, with the but, because they weren't meeting together, encouragement was not taking place. For encouragement to take place, they had to meet together. They had to participate in community. Community is a theme throughout this whole sentence. It begins in verse 19 as he says brothers. It's the second person plural all the way through. He's talking to the group. Even in these last two verses, he says one another, our own, together. It's all about community. If encouragement's going to take place, it's going to take place in community. And let me tell you, what I'm afraid of, we meet together. We come to chapel together. We go to class together. We do spiritual life together. But are we really participating in community? Is our focus the other person? Or is our focus on our class, our work, our grades, our ministry? Is the focus on us, or is it on one another? Community is one another. And that's what the author was talking about. So if we're going to have community, that's the way that we have encouragement. So, we need to uniquely motivate one another to edify the kingdom by encouraging in this community. But why? Because time is short. Time is short. Look with me to the last part of verse 25. And it says, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. And all the more as you see the day drawing near. Time is short. The day that he was talking about here was the day that Christ would return and the day that Christ would judge. But the point is that time was short. We're not promised tomorrow. And not only is our time short, not only do we need to be about this, but the window of encouragement is small. You see, whenever Brett ran over there and he grabbed me and he started dragging me, I was on the way to the house. If he wouldn't have encouraged me right then, I'd have been done. And I can't tell you the time that God has put somebody in this body, in my path, that has grabbed me by the shirt, that has drugged me through. And one time in particular was my second semester, second year. I was done. I'd had it. I was going back to the business world. I went to my first couple of classes, but I had made up my mind that I was going home. I had enough. My legs were tired. My whole body ached. I'd never read so much in my whole entire life. But let me tell you, I sat in a professor's class, Todd 115. He went over the syllabus, and then he shut it just like I shut the Bible. And he said, listen, I don't care what grade you make in this class. I don't want a grade to get in the way of what God desires to do in your life, in your heart, this semester through this class. That's what I want you to focus on. Man, and God grabbed my heart and said, Bill, I want to do something in your life. I just wept. I was going home. Not only that, but that same professor had us over to his house, and he sat the class people that were there, and he went around to each one, got to know each one. He confirmed, looked me in the eye, confirmed the gifts that God had given me, and said, God is going to use you mightily one day for his kingdom. Time is short. We got to be about the work. The costs are eternal. So let's commit to motivating one another. It says they had developed a habit of not being a community. A habit is something that takes place over time. Habits aren't broken easy, are they? Habits don't die easy. But the way habits are replaced is with new habits. So let's begin. Let's commit to make new habits with small steps. I believe with all my heart that God has assembled this body. He has given it everything that it needs right here. Let's commit today that when we notice one person's gift in our classroom that's sitting in front of us, beside us, when we notice a gift, that we'll bring it to their attention. And then we'll encourage them with that. You know, us noticing or us recognizing a need to encourage is our call. That's the Spirit prompting you, saying, man, do something. Spur them on. Not only let's do that, let's do this. 2, let's broaden our circle of friends. You know, we have our few friends that we hang around. Let's commit each week to meeting one new student, one new person, and truly getting to know them. Listen, I know you're busy. You don't have to do like Joanna did for me. It's not a long-term thing. With just a simple word, you can encourage and spur people on. Finally, when we leave somebody and we're talking, let's make the commitment that we'll leave them more encouraged after talking to us than they were before. And when you leave, have I left them more encouraged? That's what we need to be about. Listen, if you'll do that, you'll leave a legacy. What Bray Hopkins did for me happened over 20 years ago, and I've never forgotten it. In preparation of this sermon, I picked up the phone and I called him. And I said, Bray, yeah? I said, you remember me? He said, no. And I went on and I explained to him, I said, man, get your yearbook out. And he turned to it and I got him a picture. You remember me now? No. But as I kept on prompting, as I kept on going, he finally said, are you that big old boy that I pulled around the playground that time? I said, yes, I am. He said, did you wear me out thanking me all the time? I said, yes, I did. And I want to thank you again. But you're proving my point. Listen, when we pour our lives into other people, you won't remember it. You'll think it'll cost you all this time. You think it'll cost this big expense, but you'll never remember it. But the people that you help will never forget it as long as they live. There's enough people tearing apart the body of Christ. It's time that we locked arms and went shoulder to shoulder and said, Dadgummit, I'm going to help you through. I'm going to use my gifts to help you. And you'll be amazed that whenever you use your gift to help somebody else in the body, that they'll turn around and use their gift to help you. And it'll do nothing but just create just a marching army for the kingdom of God. Amen. Listen, let us be the ones that leave a legacy uniquely, thoughtfully, spurring one another on so that the kingdom of God can be edified in this community with the urgency, understanding that our time is short. Thank you.